Good morning, everybody. Hope you're all doing well. Um, Staying safe, socially distancing, doing enough physically and mentally to keep yourself sane and healthy. This morning, well, I guess you're watching whenever you're watching. So today I am going to talk about the Middle Ages in very, very, very general terms. We're going to spend some time with the Middle Ages. Um, it's 1,000 years that kind of shape what's going to be happening in the modern age. It's where Europe is going to transition from a very backwards, end of the world, kind of behind everybody else time in history, transition to where Europe will become the dominant part of the planet humanly, the place that will kind of guide the future into the modern age. So it's a hugely important time in history. Um, I'm going to start off with the fact that it's not generally considered a real good time in history. But we'll talk about all that over the next several days. So, first of all, it's the Middle Ages. So the first thing you want to know is what is it in the middle of? Okay, well, it's in the middle in terms of time, first of all. It's not a middle place, it's a middle time. And the time that it is in the middle of is after the fall of Rome. So I'm going to go to your left. After the fall of Rome, so 476 CE, Rome falls. That starts the Middle Ages. So our timeline starts right here. And you go through almost 1,000 years of this time period um, where things are generally a little bit more slowly developing, a little bit backwards. Um, and we'll talk about all those things. And then Europe is going to rise back out of this Middle Age. And the event that's going to mark the end of the Middle Ages is the Renaissance. So we have a firm, exact date start to the Middle Ages. That's 476 CE. At the end, it's a little more mushy in terms of its time. We don't have an exact date for the Renaissance. Some scholars will say that the Renaissance begins in the 1300s. Some will say it's in the early 1400s. It reaches different parts of Europe at different times. It misses some parts of Europe completely. So the Renaissance, it's the end of the Middle Ages, but because the Renaissance starts in different places at different times, the Middle Ages actually lasts longer in some places than in others. And the other thing, when people were in the Middle Ages, they didn't know they were in a Middle Age because they didn't know there was going to be an end to that age. So they had other names for their time, or rather, historians, I guess, have other names for this time period. So, other things that the Middle Ages are called. There's a fancy name, the medieval period or age. Now, medieval, Medieval, medieval simply means a middle age. Medi, as we've already learned in this course from Mediterranean, means in the middle of. The Mediterranean Sea is in the middle of lands. Meta, middle, terrain, land. The Mediterranean Sea is in between Europe and Asia and Africa. Therefore, middle of terrain, middle of lands. Medieval is middle of times. So it's, again, fall of Rome is the start, and Renaissance is the end. Medieval is just a middle age. Again, it's just different linguistics. Another name for the Middle Ages are the Dark Ages. Now, why were they sometimes called the Dark Ages? This was a nickname given to this middle period by an early Renaissance scholar by the name, oh wait, no, it wasn't Dante. Oh, drawing a blank. We're just gonna, I'll add this in later because it's a poet. Anyways, early Renaissance scholar who looked back at the 1,000-ish years since the fall of Rome, and he's like, well, that was a dark period, and we are living in a great new age. So he's in there in like the 1300s saying, we're so much better than the last almost 1,000 years. We're in an enlightened time. They were in a dark age. I'm going to think of who that is. At some point, I will randomly go, oh, that's who that was. Can't believe I'm blanking on it. So sometimes the Middle Ages are called the Dark Ages. Sometimes they are called the Age of Faith, because this is a time when the Roman Catholic Church really grows up in Western Europe and takes charge. And faith means belief. The church, it caught on as a time of faith because, as we will talk about during these next several days, this was a tough time. This was one of those ages where people are struggling to survive, and they grasped on to their belief in Christianity, hoping, having faith that that would be their avenue to an eventual positive afterlife because their lives were so horrible. So it is an age where faith was as important or more important than law, but also more important or as important as what we would call reason, what we would call science. Science is going to kind of fall off to the side during the Middle Ages. It's not going to stop completely, but it's not going to be a focus. People are going to distrust science, and they're going to put their faith, if you will, in faith. If we're looking at this as a Persian thing, obviously it's religious, in that the Roman Catholic Church takes hold, but it also falls in this I category, not the intellectual side so much, but the ideological side, that people are putting, what defines their existence is their religious beliefs, not their faith in science or rational explanations or trying to figure out how things work. It's because the Roman Catholic Church is going to tell them that this is the way, this is the answer, this is how you live your life. The church will take on this incredibly major role. And so that's why it gets the nickname Age of Faith. So we've got medieval, we've got Dark Age, we have got Age of Faith. It is sometimes also called the feudal period. I'm going to spell that one, Feudal. I'm sorry I don't have all the fancy tech stuff here, and I don't even have my whiteboards to hold up. The feudal age, and the reason for that is a new socio-political, so social and political mixed together, a new system is going to develop during this time, which is going to both provide a system of government but it's also going to define a social class system. And that system is going to be called feudalism. And we're going to spend at least a day just looking at feudalism. So for right now, all you want to know is a feudal system develops, a social class hierarchy. Um, it's actually kind of like if you play chess, that's the social class hierarchy. Most people are pawns. We would call them peasants, and the lower group of them are called serfs. But most people are pawns. Most people are low class, and they're farm laborers. And above them, you have knights with a lot of power. You will have castles. That's essentially the home of a knight. So you've got your noble class who are defending the pawns. You've got the bishops who are religious leaders who are doing a lot to define how everything works. And you have kings and queens who, yeah, they're political leaders, but mostly they're political leaders because they are in charge of military, which is political. We're going to find the church is going to take a lot of the law side of ruling, but we're going to get into all that later. So, our, our four nicknames for the Middle Ages: medieval period, Dark Ages, Age of Faith, and the feudal period. That's five. Four, the feudal period. Okay, so those are nicknames for the Middle Ages, and you're going to want to remember those, and you're going to want to remember why each of those is a name for the Middle Ages. You're going to want to remember what the Middle Ages were in the middle of. Again, that's fall of Rome until the start of the Renaissance. The time in the middle is the Middle Ages. Last up for today, because this is just a basic introduction to this time period, is we are going to break the Middle Ages down into four, count them, four units. The first, not surprising, is the early Middle Ages, but it's actually going to be the early Middle Ages and the development of feudalism. So we're going to follow up on the assignment that a few of you have already done. What was lost when Rome fell and what had to be replaced? That's what happens during the early Middle Ages. The first 350, 400 years of this period where it goes from just total chaos after Rome falls into a system that has a certain amount of order. We're not going to love all the order. And it's not like good times order, but it is going to be a structured society by the end of that period because of the development of this feudal period, this social class and political system that's going to organize society. Our second unit, we're going to talk about the rise of the Roman Catholic Church in Western Europe. The church, and it's just going to be called the church in this unit because it was the only major religion in Western Europe during this time period. Yeah, there was some Islam in the Iberian Peninsula, that's in Spain and Portugal, and you're going to have a small Jewish minority scattered throughout Western Europe. But by the time you get to the 800s, if you're talking the Scandinavian countries, you maybe push that up to about the year 1000 or so. But the Roman Catholic Church is going to be the religion of 95% or more of all Western Europeans. It is going to make the laws. The Pope will be the most powerful and important person in Western Europe. The church will be making laws, it will be keeping records, and in the 11 and 1200s, it's even going to be fighting wars. So the church is going to rise in power and basically become more than a religion. It's more than going off to church on Sunday. It's going to be defining um, social and legal and even economic life in Western Europe. Our third unit is going to be the High Middle Ages. Again, depending on where you are in Europe, this can start as early as around 900 CE, or if you're talking about Ireland, Scotland, and the Scandinavian countries way up in the north, way up in the outer reaches, this will come a little later in the 10 and 1100s. The High Middle Ages is where things are stable enough in Western Europe that you're not going to be under a constant threat of warfare. You're not worried about Germanic tribes anymore. You're not worried about Vikings anymore. And I know we're getting ahead of ourselves here. You're not too worried. You're not as worried about bandits on the road anymore because things have become more stable and you're going to see an increase in trade, a small rise in wealth, which is going to start to lead to a little bit of surplus in the upper classes and in the church. And the church is going to start building cathedrals and grand monasteries, so big, huge churches and places where people who devote their lives to the church to live in seclusion. So that's going to be like what is considered an improvement or at least a rise in the level of society. We're going to see kings and princes and nobles who aren't constantly defending anymore. So they're going to start transitioning from living in fortresses, essentially castles that are forts, into fancy places, castles that are palaces. So you're going to start to see a transition there. And with that, you're going to see a rebound in learning and a little bit in the arts. And then we're going to have our fourth unit, which is going to be the decline of the late Middle Ages. Decline in the late Middle Ages. And this is where you are going to have things kind of fall apart. What you're going to see during this time is, well, the Black Death, which we're going to talk. I'm going to spend some time with the Black Death and what we're going through now. Two pandemics, and how things might be similar and how things might be different. So, Jordan Albert is calling me right now. Hopefully, they will leave a message. Anyways, so we're going to look at that. You're going to see the 100 Years' War, which lasted over 100 years, fought between two of the great powers of Western Europe during the Middle Ages, England and France. And that's going to disrupt the gains made in the late Middle Ages. Wars are not good for things like growth in architecture and art and trade and all those sorts of things. So we're going to have, the Black Death, the 100 Years' War, the start of a series of wars called the Crusades, where the Roman Catholic Church is going to fight wars to try to take what are called the Holy Lands, specifically the city of Jerusalem, and generally the area that we would now call Israel, try to take those lands from the rising powers, Islamic powers, that have risen up at this same time in the Middle East, another thing we still have to talk about. So you're going to see this period of decline wars, pandemic, and then a long recovery from this period until you start to get again to a sort of rebirth of that high Middle Ages spirit with some new ideas mixed in, and that's going to be the Renaissance. So, those are the things we're going to be looking at as we go through the Middle Ages. Um, if you've watched this far, well, I will also write this in my instructions. There will be some questions about what I have said in this video. So please go through those questions so that I know that you have been paying attention. There might even be some spelling, so the things that I spelled, you might have to spell. I don't know yet. I haven't written the questions yet. But that's it for today. Today is Tuesday, Cinco de Mayo. And I am at this point planning on having a Zoom meeting on Thursday. I will have this also written up in my instructions, but a Thursday Zoom meeting because I have a doctor's appointment on Friday, so I'll have to do a pre-recorded class for Friday. But Zoom meeting Thursday, classes all this week with short multiple choice things following them. And that's it for today. I hope you have a great day. The sun is out, but it is cold. We will talk to you soon. Bye-bye.